Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Hello. Thank you. Thank you to those attending in person tonight and those staying engaged by watching or recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby and turn it in to our recording secretary, Kim Coven, who's seated at the end on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion. Before we dive into agenda tonight, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Pilchard Hyatt, Eastham, Vice President Williams. Those directors seated on my left, Director Abraham, Clausen, Finch, and Recording Secretary Kim Coven. And with that, we'll dive into our agenda. First up, we have our student representatives. We will start with Liberty High. Lauren Volts, I believe, and Santiago Fajardo Casaba. I'm going to get that right, I promise.
Good evening. I'm Santi Fajardo, and
Hi, I'm Lauren.
and we're here from Liberty. So the atmosphere is pretty good at Liberty coming out of fall break. Some developments since our last spoke. Homecoming court was reinstated this year at Liberty. So 10 members of the senior class that followed the Bolts Matrix, which is belonging, ownership, leadership, and teamwork, and safety, were selected by students to be in homecoming court. Also during homecoming week, fall sports and band had different outreach to elementary schools. So band performed in the mornings at several elementary schools, and fall sports also were present there to meet with elementary school students. Liberty won their homecoming football game, even though it was the middle of the rain, against North Scott, 20-16. And then moving on to the clubs and music update. So the Students for Environmental Action Club at Liberty is planning their Blooming Bolts initiative for next trimester. So they're going to be going to elementary schools Grant, Penn, Garner, and Van Allen, and they're going to speak to elementary school students about the dangers of invasive bird species and the importance of protecting local birds native to this area. Liberty Lightning Theater is preparing for their play She Kills Monsters, and they'll be performing it October 27th, 29th, and 30th. The Safe Driving Club is inviting an organization called Think Fast to speak to 9th and 10th graders during advisory tomorrow about safe driving. Difference Makers invited the family of Owen Skelly to speak to students during advisory last week about mental health. And Liberty Curricular Choirs are preparing for their fall concert tomorrow, and Lauren has more on that.
So our choir concert is tomorrow. We also have quite a few more band concerts and more orchestra concerts, music concerts coming up as it's heading towards the end of our first trimester. We have our show choirs preparing for Works in Progress with West and City, and that'll be held on October 24th, Monday at West High. Very excited for that. Our marching band and color guard did really well at our first competition ever as a school at Linn-Mar, and yesterday our marching band and color guard had a competition at Clear Creek alongside City High and had a big showcase just to show everyone what we've been working on. A little bit of sports update. Our football team is thriving, doing really well, trying to make to the playoffs. Our next home game is October 21st. They play away this weekend at Burlington. The volleyball team remains number 1 in 5A right now, and the conference tournament is tonight at Liberty between lots of different schools. And then boys golf is over. Their season went really well. Boys and girls cross country state qualifying meet is next week, and the dance team has the first ever Be Alike competition at Liberty this Saturday. So that's all we have.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from West High, Jaden Shin.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start with a short video clip. So, what you might have just heard were students cheering, muffled screams, or even seagull sounds, but what I just heard was a successful pep assembly. Now, this transitioned into homecoming as well last month, where we had about 90 student government members help set up the events, and then had a great turnout among the student body in both events. Now, it wasn't all successes throughout the week. The worst part of the week was probably the seniors losing their flag football game to the juniors. I might be biased. But as the universe does, the juniors are rewarded with the opportunity to take the PSAT tomorrow. So fear not, I believe they're highly prepared, whether it's studying at home or through our tutoring service that we have run by West students, as I mentioned last meeting. And they're ready to join a tradition of excellence, which is our slogan at West. I say this because recently we were notified that 24 of our West High student body was nominated or selected for the National Merit Semifinalists, which is the highest in Iowa, or all Iowa schools. Pivoting to Halloween, Club West is having a fundraiser. I invite you all to join. It's going to be at the Found Farm on the 22nd of October, and it's hosting one of the most highly anticipated athletic events of the year, the Cornhole Tournament. As I mentioned last meeting, we had a new award, the Heroes of Troy Award, which highlights the dedicated efforts of a member of staff at West. The past two winners were Miss Kanabi with the kitchen manager, really locking down the fort in the kitchen and delivering good food to our students, and Miss Wickner, who teaches our chemistry class. She's been highlighted to keep an energetic teaching style, which keeps students motivated, especially on Mondays. Recently, we were really motivated and inspired by City Eye's project of Tampon Tuesday. So our vice president of student government created our own period club at West High with similar goals and initiatives. And I think it really highlights the importance of inter-school relationships as a means to build our community. And it shows the importance of meetings like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from City High, Mary Kate Pug and Ari Collins. Pew, thank you. And oh my gosh, you guys look great.
Oh, thank you. Hi, guys. I'm Mary Kate.
I'm Ari, as you just said.
Okay, so starting off, we had a really fun HOCO week, or homecoming. That was the last week of September, so students participated in Spirit Days, dressing up as all sorts of different characters and themes. On a Wednesday of that week, we had our homecoming parade, which we hadn't had the 2 years prior due to traffic and pandemic issues. So that was a huge success. We had over 30 parade entries, varying from elementary schools to all the clubs at City High, and it was just a really great community event. And then that same night, we went back to Batesfield to have our annual Powder Puff tournament. So teams participated in that, and that was a lot of fun. We made our own trophies and had a chili dinner put together by the PSTO. And then that Saturday, we had our homecoming dance, which was also just a great night. We had over 1,000 tickets sold, which is very good. Had a lot of revenue from that, and students were very happy with the turnout. And then sports update, our cross-country teams are getting ready to have their state qualifying meet this coming Thursday. This past week, our boys cross-country team won the MBC Super Meet, and Ford Washburn set a new state record for the 5K. And then our golf teams are wrapping up their season. They had many successes this year. And then our football teams are still going strong.
The other side. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about what he previously talked about. We also have our PSATs tomorrow. We have over 250, I believe, freshmen and sophomores signed up to take that, so that's an exciting opportunity for them. I believe last week the marching band won the D1 Superior Rating at the state festival, which, no shame if you don't know exactly what that means. I also didn't. It is actually the highest award they can earn, so we're super proud of them for that. Peter and the Starcatcher, which is our musical, they're doing great work on that, both in the set and the actors, and they'll be performing that on the 28th, 29th, and 30th of October. We also, as previously mentioned, have our Works in Progress performance coming up for show choir, which will be the first time all 3 of the show choirs perform their acts. And as you may notice, we're a little dressed up today. That's because we just really like the school board. We love coming here to talk. Okay, maybe technically we might have a concert choir, the first concert choir for City High this year, which we actually have to get to in like 10 minutes. So we're super happy to be here. Thank you for our time. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out to come talk to us, all our students. We really do appreciate it. Next, we have our ICA update from President Brady.
Thanks, President Malone, Vice President Williams, Director, Superintendent Degner, and I teach high school, so I might be a little biased, but you can understand why it's amazing to teach high school. Our students are just fantastic, and every day is really just quirky, a lot of fun, a lot of energy. So they do a great job of representing what goes on. And if any of them are interested in teaching, we would love to have them become educators for us in the district. And I'll use that as our segue. We have, and thanks to Carmen and Eric and Nick, and Chase is not here, and others on those teams, Luke has been involved as well with our Educators Rising Conference, which is our first ever Educators Rising Conference. It's October 17th at the Kirkwood Regional Center, and it really involves a lot of our fantastic community partners. And so I think we're really excited about it. And I know we'll get to that more in some of the agenda setting when we talk about what we're doing with the education committee meeting after that. But I just want to give a shout out. Students are still, if their folks are listening and their families or they're around listening to this, they're still able to sign up through the 12th. So we would love to see a lot of students there, as part of our Grow Our Own program. My other piece is just to thank the board for your willingness to allow us and our calendar committee and our district to explore smarter, more balanced calendars for our school year. I think our first, what's being sort of dubbed fall break, happened last week, and that is in large part because of our great ability to recognize other religious holidays in our calendar, which I think, one, is just smart on our equity goals, and two, it allows us as a calendar committee to find some opportunities where we do things that I think are really good for staff and students and families. So thank you for doing that. I think that's a direct result of some of the policy choices that you made, and it's been just really overwhelmingly positive, in what we're able to do. So there's been some discussion about the calendars, but to me, those are the things that you can do along the way that are going to shrink the summer learning gap and also make this a destination district. So thanks for your willingness to do that. It was fantastic. We had just on a personal note, amazing time. So thank you.
Thank you, Brady. Next on our agenda is community comment, but I do not have any, so we'll proceed to approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Kim, there's a motion and a second. We're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Before we get to the consent agenda, were there any questions from directors who reviewed the bills this cycle? Seeing none, are there any agenda items that people would like to see pulled?
I would like to pull 12.
Okay, that's Appendix 9. Are there any others? Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda minus item 12?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Kim, there's a motion and a second. We're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay, that takes us to Appendix 9. President Williams?
Vice President Williams.
Oh, yeah. I said Vice President in my head.
Superintendent Degner, would you possibly have a presentation related to Appendix 9 to
We
share with us
would.
tonight?
How about that timing?
Wow.
So I'd like to welcome Director Van Hemert and Principal Gross and the team here this evening to talk to you about the West High front entrance. We've talked about this as part of our safety and security plans, and so we wanted the opportunity to share this with you tonight. So thank you, Director Williams, for pulling that. I'll turn it over to Dwayne to let him introduce the rest of the folks with us tonight.
Well, thanks and good evening. We're going to talk about West High tonight. Well, I would tell you that it's been a long road, but we're here. We've been hashing this out for months, and Mitch will agree with me. I'm sure his head is going up and down right now. So it's been a process. And Shive Hattery is the design firm, and Shive Hattery also did the earlier phases. And you may recall that we've done the whole exterior envelope of the building. We've renovated the classrooms. We added on a new gymnasium. We built a new athletic director's office, upgraded their weight room. We've done all kinds of neat things. We added a parking lot. We've done all kinds of neat things there, but we didn't get it all done. And this was part of the promise that we talked about in Facility Master Plan last summer. And so hopefully we're getting a lot closer to that. And we looked at the music and orchestra area, which was a direct result of a couple of instructors coming to this board a year ago, last summer, when we were talking about it, and how they wanted to see their areas improved. We also heard from the students, because West High really liked the student commons. Even though they have a brand new renovated cafeteria and kitchen, they really didn't have a place to meet before and after school like they do at Liberty, for example. So we've listened to them. And the admin area was kind of the last area, but woefully inadequate, so we've looked at that as well. So I introduce Jerica Grabner, I'm sorry. She's new to me anyway. So, and she's been working with us on this. And when you get to see the elevations, she's responsible for that. And she's done a really nice job. So I'll turn it over to Jerica, and then we'll have Mitch come up and make a few comments, and we'll entertain questions. How's that? Sorry, Jerica. I knew what it was.
Thank you for the introduction. Here. So I'm going to go over the plans with kind of just a general overview here, and then I will go down in some large plans and look at the areas a little bit closer, and then finally wrap up with an exterior elevation of the design that we've come up with. So here in the highlighted areas, just give you a kind of an idea what the scope is. This gray box here, that's the auditorium. There's some HVAC upgrades happening there. This teal color, that is the orchestra and vocal music that Dwayne touched on, that's getting revamped and renovations. So this kind of line right here is an imaginary line of where the existing building facade is. So this portion here is actually an addition. The light yellow would be the main office, separated by a new main entry vestibule. If you recall, the existing one is actually over here in this yellow area, so it is pushing down over here. And this is the existing office area, so that's moving down here. The guidance is just across the hall here. And the yellow is going to be the health suite. Over here, this magenta area, that is a bit alternate for an outdoor seating area, which I'll go into detail in a little bit about. There are also some restroom renovations in this project. That's this purple area here, and it's a little hard to see, but there's one here and here as well. The larger one is actually going to be 3 different levels. The lower, main, and upper floors all renovated, and once that's done, that will be all the restrooms in the building will have been renovated as part of this project. This medium blue color, that's the media center. That's going to get finished upgrades, and there is a stair infill that will happen there so that we can give some classrooms to the school on that upper level. This light blue color here is the relocation of the print and copy centers and the computer tech services to be able to get those classrooms upstairs. Jumping into a little bit of an enlarged view. So this is that main office component. The light yellow here is that main office. Come into the new vestibule. That's a secure entry into the office, and you can get checked in and either go about inside the building or back outside. The guidance office is across the way. They do have a visual connection still, so they can collaborate and communicate with each other as needed. Family services is tucked back here, giving them a little bit more privacy. And this is the health suite up here. There is adjacency to the gym, which we know a lot of incidents occur, and so it's a good location for health.
So you might show them where the 2 entrances are right now, just to kind of make it relative.
The existing entrance is right here.
And then there's one at the other end too.
And yep, this is also an existing entrance down here. So also in the main office and the guidance side, we do have means of secondary egress just in case there is a security threat issue. They feel like they need to retreat into the office farther. There is an opening here in the kitchenette. It's a little hard to see, but that's an open way. And then there's a door. And then over here on the guidance side, there is a passage here as well. And then for this bid alternate, that is the outdoor seating area. We know that the kids really love those stairs, so we want to preserve the stairs, but we are proposing to make this more of a student-centric area and also trying to help with making it not so obvious that this is maybe an entrance, making it less like the main entry. And I think we're going to accomplish that either way, but this kind of helps be able to put some elements over here to tie the new addition and the existing building together a little bit more and make the design a little more cohesive. So I have some built-in seating areas. The plan is to keep the structural integrity of this wall that is existing, but remove the existing face brick and just elongate that wall into a serpentine shape connecting to the new addition, and then we'll put a new face brick on to make that all kind of tie in together. You'll see there are some doors here from that new common space, and if the bid alternate isn't accepted, that will just be windows. So either way, we're gonna get lots of natural daylight into this area here. We're also proposing putting in some skylights for this area to make it feel as bright and welcoming as possible and really feel open. There's no wall here, there's just columns, so there's really great visual between the cafeteria, so if there's overflow, they can still have that visual connection and supervision. One thing to note is that there is an extra set of doors here, some of you might notice, and that is a fire code. We have to have them for that. But this would still be egress over here as well. Moving to the next plan. So this is that vocal music and orchestra area. It's completely reconfigured. There are existing risers in here that would be leveled, so they're gonna get a lot more flexibility out of those spaces than they currently have. We're also punching windows into that facade and bringing in a lot more natural daylighting. Moving to the media center. That's this medium blue color here on the plans, and that's finish upgrades. We do have that stair and fill that I touched on a little bit, and that's going to gain us these 5 classrooms upstairs. And this is just those purple areas just representing that multi-level bathroom restoration. And back here is that copy print center and computer services area. I'll jump to the exterior rendering. Oh,
Yeah, we'll
I
get
think
that
it's a
on another
separate
drawing.
file.
She'll get it for you.
Okay.
I just mess it up.
Thank you. So we had several variations of exterior concepts, and we went through West High and their staff and faculty quite a bit, and this was, they had a lot of internal polling too, and this was overwhelmingly the favorite. So this design is really looking to the existing building to kind of relate back to some of the elements and the materiality. The vertical repetition is pulling from both adjacent wings to this addition, and it's emphasized by these pilasters here in this lighter color. That's a precast color, and that's really being also inspired, the materiality and the color, from the existing precast tees that are on the building over here, and there's several other cast stone features on the building as well. So keeping with that rhythm of the existing building, but trying to do it in a way that's respectful of the building, but also kind of modernized. So you'll see a lot of kind of repetition here, but it's asymmetrical, and we're playing with it a little bit. So taking some traditional features, but modernizing them and trying to be respectful to the building. This reddish color here and up here as well are similar to the brick that's on the building now, as close as we can to match it. Of course, it's so hard to match brick from decades ago, but we've been pretty successful in previous phases where we take a brick and we actually have someone come out and stain it. So it's a little bit of an artistic process, but we can get pretty close to that existing brick. So again, kind of playing with that asymmetrical features. Down here we have the brick, and then up here we kind of switch it and flip it, and that makes a really nice kind of spot for the school's signage. Keeping with that verticality, we have some darker, like a dark bronze brick that's going to be an elongated brick in a vertical orientation, and that's here on these panels right next to the windows. And that's actually pulling from the existing brick as well, because the brick mix that's on the building is a calico mix, and it actually has mostly red, but then it also has these dark bronze bricks in it. So we're pulling it directly from that inspiration and matching that color there. The main entry here is this geometrical form that is made out of a perforated metal panel. The perforation allows for this really interesting translucency, and we're using that to kind of highlight this large sculptural W that's behind here that's going to be very prominent. This is West High. And we have some plans to make this look really cool at night. We're dreaming of illuminating this in the green color of West High, so I think it's going to look really great. Coming back to the retaining wall, we do have some site challenges to move the entry down here, but so far we've been able to avoid any disruption to the drive, but we will have to have a bit of a retaining wall there. And then again over here on this bid alternate, refacing that brick that I touched on a little bit earlier, choosing a lighter color inspired from the existing precast on the building so that it feels a little bit lighter and not so heavy and keeps the color palette from getting too dark. We're also incorporating back in that cast stone plaque here with the school slogan on it, so we know that that's a really nice opportunity for kids to take student pictures, so we want to make sure they still have that if this bid alternate is accepted. Then we do have some perforated metal panel again on top of this retaining wall and on top of this serpentine wall, and we do need it for code because we need a guardrail height, especially this existing wall is not quite there yet, but it does have railings. So just kind of doing things like that, we can tie all this together and make it feel a little bit more cohesive that way. And it adds, you know, kind of that visual transparency too, so the wall doesn't have to get as tall. Here you can see back here, these are the windows or doors, depending on if the bid alternate is accepted, into that commons area, trying to get as much natural light back there, and large windows here into the main office, and also windows here into the guidance office, a little bit smaller for a little bit more privacy on that end. There is some metal panel currently here on the building that's a little bit patched. There's a couple different products that are on the building right now, so we would propose to redo that just so it's all freshened up a bit. And that's all I have.
Okay, so we'll let Mitch make a few comments, and then we'll,
Thank you.
thanks, Jeremy.
Hi, board members. This is fun for me to be here. I don't get to come very often, but I'll be very brief. First of all, I want to say thank you, all of you, for your commitment in this project. I'm going to give a huge shout out to the ESC staff from the physical plan, and thank you, Shiv Hattery and Jerica. Jerica has just been wonderful to work with. We give her thoughts and ideas, and she puts them together, and we have this, which we all think is a stunning visual. You know, when you think about the grandeur and beauty of City High and the newness of Liberty, we also realize that West was built in 1968, so it's never going to be an architectural gem. But I think that the staff at Shiv Hattery has just done a tremendous job of making a really stunning building. So we're very, very pleased with that. And just a couple other things I'd like to add real quickly. You know, I want to just say to the West community, it's never fun being last on a list of projects, but you've got to be patient to do that. And while we've seen, you know, beautiful projects done at Liberty and City, you know, I think this is a testament that the district is committed to keeping its promise and that West is going to get its due. And I think this is testament to that. And, you know, I hope a few times bid alternates were mentioned. I want the board to remain cognizant that, you know, we realize that inflation and building expenses are higher than they have been in the past, but we hope that, you know, the consideration of the long-term impact of this district will be made when that time comes for that. And finally, I'll just end by saying with the library addition, you heard new classrooms being added. We've not added classrooms at West High School since the 9th grade center was built. And right now, every single classroom is being used. There's no room in the inn at West. So 5 new classrooms is going to be greatly, greatly appreciated and will be put to good use. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Oh, before you do,
Sorry,
Just-
Dwayne.
Just to add on to what Mitch said, I received the cost estimate just this week, and I was pleased. It's really close to what we had projected we'd be at, where we'd be. Now, I don't want to overpromise, because things can change in the next few months, but I'm hopeful that they'll come down, and they're starting to trend that way now. So I think we're going to be in good shape, but I was pleased with the cost estimate that I got.
So the principal's suite that I wanted?
Yeah, no, the hot tub's out.
On that, we'll open it up for questions, Mitch.
And I just wanted to add that Tim Fair with City High is here as well, and he's doing a lot of the mechanical design work for the building, so he's here if we have any questions in that regard. And I might add that we'll be back in a month or two with updated plans for City High, because we're doing their Career Tech Center right now in the design. So having said that, we'll answer your questions.
I just wanted to point out, so I recently visited West High, and I can't believe what an improvement this is, because it really wasn't intuitive to know where to even go in for a main entrance. This is such a facelift. I'm so happy for West High. It needs this, so great job on it. I mean, it's just 100% something that high school deserves.
So I would add that we struggled a little bit, and that part of that struggles was figuring out how we're going to build it and how we're going to phase through it and maintain a secure entrance and all that. But we just got that figured out about a week ago, all the different steps that we're going to have to go through to get it done. But I think we're there. So that was part of the process.
I'll just echo it. It looks great. I mean, really taking a building that's, yeah, like what you said, 1968, not an architectural gem, and making it, you know, really in line with kind of what we expect in the district after what we've seen with the bond. So nice job.
The concern is always function, and then the design is second, and it sounds like it's going to be an incredibly functional space, but man, is this design really cool. Like, it's you drive up to City and you drive up to Liberty, and you're kind of, as a board member at least, I'm like, yeah, I'm a board member in Iowa City School District, and I know that when this is done, we're going to all feel the same way driving up to West. So thank you for getting that done. I'm so excited to see it done.
The aesthetics and the natural light and the attention to detail, Jerica, right down to you wearing your West High green tonight, are very much appreciated by this West High mother. I didn't know that West High Best High could be better, but I see that it can, so thank you.
I graduated from high school in 1968, so that tells you how old that damn building is.
Well, I'll say that I graduated in 1960, so, but I'm not proud of it. So, just talk about the 5 additional classrooms. So, do you want more than that?
Oh,
I know you always.
Charlie,
say
yes.
that.
Yeah, I mean.
He's fine. Yeah,
Yeah. How much time do I have, Matt? Yeah. No, I think, you know, when I think a concern that we'll have in the future, we have temporaries that I think the goal is to get those removed. But I think just given where we are right now from a spacing standpoint, when those get removed, you know, the programming that are going on in those will have to be replaced at some point. So I think eventually, yeah, we'd like to have, and we'll need more classroom. But it was very innovative, because here's what's kind of cool, because sometimes there's a good thing from not having renovations done recently, because it gives time for technology and things to change. So the library and the media center, the way it was laid out, and because it hasn't really been touched, it's so outdated that we were able to reconfigure things. So the entire upstairs of the library were computer labs, but we don't use computer labs anymore because we're one-to-one. So we're able to change those computer labs into classrooms. So I think that's going to be very, very effective. So, you know, I think we have good ideas and good plans for those, but yeah, we're always looking for more space, Charlie. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks very much for your comments. And I noticed I had a question about the security of the part of the building that will be open. Sorry to be klutzy, but to the right of your illustrations there.
Right, well, you know, and we can bring it back up if you like, but where the music room is currently located, we're actually going to displace that program for a few months and put them back probably in the second band room or some other place, maybe the stage. And we're gonna penetrate the building right there and create a temporary secured entrance. while the rest of that building's under construction. So we'll never lose the secured entrance during construction.
And all the entrances will be secured
Yes.
after construction, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That was part of the struggle we had. How are we going to build this? And so we came up with that solution, and we're going to remove part of the building to make it work, but then put it back together.
All right, that makes sense. Good, thank you.
It is a very beautiful design and exciting. I cannot wait to see the finished product because the picture alone really does build the excitement to see West High finally get their due. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, is there a motion to approve Appendix 9?
I would move that we approve Appendix 9.
Second.
Are there any more discussion or questions? Okay, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Next on the agenda is policy review, and I'll turn it over to the newly elected chair of that, Director Finch.
Thank you, President Malone. Actually didn't realize this was part of my duties because Sean normally did this.
Just a summary.
So this evening we did the second reading of the 100 series. Many of you were there tonight. Are there any others that have anything to add or any corrections if you were able to review that? We discussed this at the last meeting. And this was the first reading of the 200 series. Some of the additions that we made, that have been made, have to deal with the quasi-judicial duty of the board and serving as a neutral arbiter. And I don't think anybody had any additions or revisions to that. And then the policy primers, which again we discussed last time.
So Jane, I had a question about section 200.3, responsibilities of the board of directors, the last paragraph. So I read this paragraph several times trying to understand it, and it's probably my deficiency. Thank you. So I have a question about the circumstances when the board acting as in its quasi-judicial role might be able to talk about the investigation phase or steps in a matter that's brought to it. And the way the policy is written now, it says that the board doesn't engage in investigatory matters before something, before an item is brought to us, okay? But when we're considering circumstances or a matter that's brought to us, it seems to me that we may want to have some questions or recommendations or directions about how the investigation for that item was conducted. So I assume that this paragraph doesn't prohibit us from doing that. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think that's what we assumed at the P&G meeting last time when we discussed this. I do wonder if it might be helpful to define what investigate and become involved means for the policy, just to clarify it. And I guess I'll ask Superintendent Digner about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that's a good question, Charlie. And even if you think of the example of the 100 series where we made some edits about the way we handle investigation, some of the closeout communication, that's where you influence policy about how those investigations need to be conducted or things we'd like to see happen in the district, right? I think what this part of this portion of the 200 series is referencing is that you guys wouldn't want to put yourselves into the investigator role. You wouldn't want to put yourself into the disciplinarian role. You wouldn't want to be involved directly in those employment matters because then that would, in a way, prejudice you by the time you would have to serve as that neutral arbiter, right? Because you would have been involved in that process along the way with the addition of that quasi-judicial role in there. So I think it's really a policy intended to clarify those roles of the board. You still have the ability to influence direction to the admin team about how investigations should be conducted in a fair way, and then that's our charge to handle those. But if there was an issue with how we then did conduct an investigation, that would be your chance, to be neutral in that regard and be able to hear maybe an employee's concern and the administrative team side of that equation. So I don't think it's getting into the weeds with the concern you're worried about, or that it's complicating that concern, because you still have the ability to influence policy on the investigation end. It's just saying not to be the active investigator, if that makes sense. I think I heard the spirit of that correctly.
Do we think that that needs to be defined more so it's more clear, or that it's fine just the way it is here?
I think we're comfortable with the way it is. I saw a lot of heads nodding as I was talking, so I think if we kind of have that general understanding, I mean, this is the sample policy from the School Board Association and their language, so I think that's fairly the norm on that, and I think anything around investigations is outlined in other policy.
So you're talking about clarifying the board does not investigate or become involved in, I think it's clear as it stands, but I'm not sure what other verbiage we'd put in there to say, to make it different. I think it's understandable.
Does that, are you fine with that, Charlie? Does that make sense to you, or would you like it more clear?
I hesitate to recommend getting into changing a recommendation from the association, right, thank you. And especially from doing something like that at this table. I just want to bring up that as a way, what I'm just trying to do is trying to understand if this provision does not prevent the board from talking about the investigation phase of a matter that's brought to it.
Right. And I do want to point out, this is just the first reading, so it will be on the next agenda for policy and governance. So if you think about it more and there's more questions that can be raised at that next committee meeting before we vote on it, because we'll see that as part of the action items, we have the 100s and the policy primers tonight. So there's still an opportunity to have further discussion on that.
Okay, thank you.
And is your concern that once the investigation is concluded, we may want to inquire about how it was conducted?
Yes.
Then maybe just, and we don't have to do it tonight, but maybe the language add is ongoing.
Maybe so, right.
And then once the investigation is no longer ongoing, it would take it out of the purview of this policy.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it tonight.
Right,
We
right.
would bring it again, yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Sure, all right, thanks.
November 29th is our next meeting.
Great. So, thank you. I don't know if anybody else had anything to add, so we'll keep moving along. Next is the public hearing, and I will turn it over to Vice President Williams.
You demoted me. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the West High School exhaust fan replacement project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on September 27th, 2022. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on September 28th, 2022. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. November 3rd, 2022 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on September 28th, 2022. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing no questions from the board, are there any questions from the public? All right, President Malone, I will turn it back to you.
And we will close that public hearing. Next, we have the equity update.
Hi again, everybody. You're going to get to hear from Mr. Shutt here again this evening. We're going to talk high school social studies as part of our equity update this evening. So Brady's prepared to give you a nice brief update around that. And remember, this year we're doing the equity updates at a monthly meeting, and this is our turn to provide that update to you tonight.
All right, thanks. How are we, volume okay? Sometimes these are, all right, fantastic. So thanks for the opportunity to give an update on secondary social studies. As you remember, we completed our self-study as a larger group committee within the community and filed our report with all of you in June of 21. And so we are beginning the implementation of that action plan. Social studies teams this year have really been working collaboratively to integrate the new secondary curricular materials that we purchased, and we thank you for that purchase. And we've worked with our publishers on training around that, so that's been a significant part of the summer as well as the fall. And we're also working on the high reliability schools level 3 guaranteed and viable curriculum to create district priority standards as well as pacing guides and then common summative assessments at the district level. And throughout that work and the creation of the priority standards, we're asking all of our teams at the district level to consider two really important questions. And one is what really are the highest priority standards for our students? And if we're going to have a curriculum that's viable, it has to be one that really focuses on the very most important, student learning outcomes that we as a team can agree on, drawn from, of course, our national standards and guidance as well as our state standards, and then also your board priorities. So the second question every team is asking is, how is our work making our curriculum and our curriculum materials more inclusive and representative? And that aligns directly with the district's comprehensive diversity, equity, inclusion plan. So that's that was something that came through very clearly as a desire of the students, of the teachers and staff and educators, as well as our community. So that has been work that's been ongoing. As an example of that, I think it's important to have some examples. For our government curriculum, one of the first things that we study is the concept of democracy, and it is a contemporary American government class, and so we made some additions to that opening unit by having students read Sandra Day O'Connor's last public letter. Sandra Day O'Connor, in addition to being the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court, of course, was instrumental in creating a program called iCivics, which is a fantastic program that's available nationwide and has really been great for students across the nation. And we also read John Lewis's last public letter, published posthumously the day after his death, You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation, which is a beautiful letter that really is a call to action for our young people. And so we feel like those are the sorts of things that we can do that are relevant for young people, that show them, hopefully some inspirational, figures and leaders in our political life that connects directly to the standards that we have in our state and that are, make our curriculum and our experiences more inclusive and representative of the student body. We do also see, I would say, that Carmen and Luke has been working with us, and of course Amy leading our work with high reliability schools. We do see the guaranteed and viable curriculum as a matter of equity. What our work is to create a guaranteed and viable curriculum that we see across the district, and so that it isn't dependent upon the zip code of the student or the school that they're in terms of the quality of experience that they're going to receive. And that then is going to be where our collaborative teams at our building levels as well as the district level do a lot of that work to share instructional practices and strategies, formative assessments, and then look at really very clearly at student outcomes and achievement data so that we can all improve for all of our students. And so we really see, I think that's one of the exciting things about HRS, is we do see all of those levels connecting to equity, and certainly with the guaranteed viable curriculum, we see that as at the district level with the coordinating work that I facilitate, we see that as really an important part of our equity work. At your building levels, your social studies teams are working in collaborative teams to begin the PLC process, a PLC questioning process, and you know, there's of course some logistical issues and working that through, but I think the building level administrators have done a really good job of identifying collaborative teams who then are, you know, working on keeping the students at the center of everything that they're doing. And I think that that's a really important part of that collaborative work. I think teachers, by and large, and I've been one for many, many years, we're really fantastic at collaborating in terms of the planning that we do and the sharing of resources, but sometimes it's hard to make that transition to make sure that every time we're doing it, we're also thinking about student outcomes. And that, again, that's a matter of equity. That's what's going to drive those conversations, and that's what we're doing at the building level. It's connected to the district level, connected to the work we're doing with the high reliability schools. So that's my district social studies update. But I answer, of course, and entertain any questions that folks have.
Are there any questions from the directors?
We talked about this before when you presented it, and one of the very, very few benefits of the kids learning online is reading along with them in all of their studies. So I had a chance to read along in the social studies curriculum. And, you know, as good as ours was, there was still a lot of room for improvement.
Yep.
And what I love is the collaboration that I'm hearing about between the HRS implementation and also the DEI. Because we said from the beginning those things will be inclusive, not mutually exclusive. So it's just great to hear, because social studies, you have to have that. You have to have all of that coming together, and it sounds like you guys are really doing that.
Yep, thanks. I will just, as a shout out too, to Carmen Guanaguale, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and then also to Luke Dillon, sitting by my side. Some of our training, it was very explicit, and we were very intentional across the curricular areas that here's how we make these connections. And so I think that that has been really important professional development for your curriculum coordinator, so I appreciate that comment. And would say I think that that's extending across your curricular areas as well. We see, of course, in social studies, I think we have a particular opportunity and responsibility to do that, and I think our other areas also see that as well. So.
Are there any challenges you've had with this? We always get to hear, you know, the easy stuff, but is there anything you want to draw our attention to that might be difficult looking forward, or you?
I think, no, I mean, our community's been incredibly supportive. I think the board support has been fantastic. I think the values are clear to us, so that makes the work in that regard easier. I think understanding that content has changed and that it's now digital and physical and it's evolving, and what that means for a classroom teacher and for a student engaging in the content, you know, changes. And I think that that's just probably a difference that you see. I mean, I think a lot of us who have been around think, you know, you do curriculum review, you buy some new books. There's obviously more to that. That's simplifying it down a lot. But it really, the idea, the notion of the books is sort of antiquated. I mean, it really is digital content. And so that means integrating, and I will say, I'll give a shout out too to Adam's tech team. They're fantastic. So the integration into Canvas, so the students have learning opportunities that are easily accessible to them and that are accessible to our families, and they can be viewed by all of our families. Most of my families are observers on my Canvas page. And so they know exactly what I'm doing. There's nothing to hide. It's fully transparent. I just think those tech parts it just changes the way that you go about some of your preparation. And I think that if you talk to probably our elementary teachers and coordinators, they would tell you that as well, and building administrators, it's just sort of changed, you know, with that. I think it's obviously a positive change, but there's some challenges. But thanks, I appreciate that question too.
Great information, Brady. How is it going working towards the common assessments? I guess that was a stumbling block that I saw that was hard for sometimes. So how's that progress happening on
Yeah,
that?
thanks, Director Abraham. It's Molly. I think that it's interesting, and what's been good about focusing on the priority standards and having more time to work together is that it has moved us along a little bit in that. I think that there was more maybe resistance initially because of the idea that somehow I think teacher autonomy, was going to be lost. And that sort of was what we ran up against in part for a long time. I think we've done a better job at helping people understand that even if your assessments at the end, your summative assessments are in common, all of that work along the way will be differentiated. And should be differentiated because you have different students in your different classrooms. As a teacher, my fourth period is different than my fifth. I have to deliver things differently. I have to react differently. I have to have different strategies. And so I think as we've worked with teachers, that's sort of helped in that process, you know. I think continuing to think about authentic, high-leverage sorts of assessments is a really important thing that all of the curricular areas need to do, you know, including social studies.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Okay.
Just I make this point because I really appreciate the questions folks ask, and thanks, Director Abraham, for that about the common assessment, because that's where, you know, I guess, you know, when I was at West and a co-teacher, I think social studies, I would say, was a department that was wildly different from one class to just the content. It was just different, right?
Yep.
Better, not better or worse. And that's where I think we're going to get some mileage. And then the one thing I also worry about, and especially now that I'm, you know, back in a classroom, is piling on and the burnout that comes with piling on. And I know it's easy for us at the board to say, we want this to happen. And the worry is that then it's just one more thing and nothing gets done well. And so my hope, and I guess what I see is the real opportunity for HRS and the PLCs and the common assessments and bringing that all together is it's doing the work. And, you know, especially since DEI work has been this, you know, obviously a real centerpiece of what this board's been working on, but making that at the heart of what we do curricularly, so that we're doing all that work at the same time, that we're doing equity work through curriculum, and it all informs one another, and eventually it becomes, it's not just more work, just the work is better. And therefore, the outcomes for the students are better, both from what they're learning and the way they're learning it. And then there's only one way for us to know that, and that's to assess it. And I feel that's the real hard part as a board. The assessments we see aren't very informative, right? They're this high level, if it's the ISASP or some of that stuff, it's just this real high level stuff. So and then the numbers never move. And we're like, well, why do the numbers never move? Well, because we don't really know. Because at the most fundamental level, we don't really know what the students are learning or not from one class to another. So my hope is that as people see that and as teachers see that, it becomes relatively quickly clear that this just makes the job more functional and more doable. And we get people excited again, rather than just another thing. As great and important as it is, if I just pile one more thing and you don't have time to do the 15 things that you don't have time for, none of it matters, because what we see is burnout and people leaving the profession or just not entering it at all. And so I'm excited for that. I mean, I know it's high-minded up here, but everything that I'm hearing from you folks, and thank you, Brady, for this tonight, gives me confidence that this is a place where we can do that and do it well, and then start to see those results. And again, get people fired up, so it's not just one more thing that I might be really excited about, but I just don't have time in my day to do as a teacher. And so I haven't often said, I'm saying this now, and you'll hear it often from here on out, we've got to remove things from people's plates, or we've got to give them ways, or if we say, here, we want you to do this, we also say, and here's when we're gonna let you do that. Here, we want you to do this thing, and here's the time we are gonna give you to do that. And it's not just, well, figure it out, because that's, you know, we can't figure it out without people just donating hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of time on top of the time they already put in above and beyond contract hours. So thank you. And yeah, just that refrain that we've got to be more efficient and smarter about the way we do this if we're going to make progress in these at all.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, JP.
Thank you. And Director Eastham, you look like you want to say something.
I think JP has suggested a couple of really interesting things we could consider looking at it at our board retreat, which is assessment and time to do what we want to be done. So maybe that's something we could actually look at more carefully during the retreat period. So, and maybe Brady, you come and tell us what to do. Things like that.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Thank you. Superintendent Degner, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Brady did a nice job, and I appreciate Director Clausen's comments about how we really envision a lot of this work starts to fit together and how our folks actually understand, or it makes more sense about why we're doing what we're doing and how it is interconnected. Because I think that's part of the, the problem we need to take responsibility for, is that we have done extra things without really explaining how it fits together. And that's why you've heard us talk about being excited about high reliability schools, and why we believe it gives us a pathway into that our equity work can't be a standalone issue, right? It has to be embedded into our work, so that when we look at priority standards, it's a natural part of the conversation. We look at effective instruction practices, it's a natural part of the conversation. It's just how we do school. And so I think that's the exciting part for us, and I think Brady did a nice job of talking about our secondary social studies example, about how that's coming to fruition. And I think it's honestly helped us slow down and focus on some things that we need to do right now, and trying to not take too big of a bite of the apple at once, is that we need to get this part right first before we're really ready to talk about maybe even common assessments like Molly talked about. Maybe we first need to actually know, are we teaching the right standards? Are we doing that? And we are lockstep there before we worry about what we're doing on the common assessment end, right? So some of those examples, I think it's been a nice focus for our team, a nice centering point, and some language to give us around how we actually focus the work.
Great. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the legislative items discussion. You will see that what was uploaded was last year's priorities flyer. So we recognize that there's some edits that need to be done for this legislative session, but I would open up the discussion on thoughts about that. I don't know if Superintendent Degner or
I'd probably just reiterate some of the things you did, President Malone, that obviously will update accordingly for this year's data, statistics, information, and team members. But you may recall at the last meeting, we talked about the priorities we submitted to the School Board Association, the 4 you selected off that list. From my memory and looking at the notes from last week, Chapter 20 wasn't one that we selected there that seemed to generate a lot of conversation. And that may be something else you'd want to include on your flyer. So I would just say this is really our flyer to distribute to the community and to advocate for and distribute to legislators and keep our priorities of focus, or our talking points of focus. So it's really yours to create and shape as you wish. If you wanted to have those 4 priorities you submitted last time with some others, this would be your chance to kind of have that conversation about how you'd like this to, how you would like it to read, the points you'd like to communicate, and then Kristen works her wizardry on making it look outstanding for us.
I mean, knowing that it's only a limited amount of space on our handout, and seeing all of these are really great. There's just one that I don't know if we can talk about, but Director Pilcher-Hyatt had brought up a couple of meetings ago, and we had a speaker here at our last meeting about the gun amendment that's going to be on the ballot and what the implications are for school districts. I don't know how we can frame that, but I think since this is our flyer and one that we're getting out in front of people, that may be important, because once we start circulating it, it also may be a done deal, because it's on a ballot for November 4th. So I think it's a couple of different options we can probably look at on how to communicate that, either before November or depending on what happens.
Well, and so it's adjacent to this, the flyer, it would be a recommendation for a resolution by the board that we would want to do, as President Malone said, very quickly. Because again, the language on this amendment, even the language for the signs about the amendment, which I have in my own yard, it says no to strict scrutiny. I mean, I'm a lawyer, we use strict scrutiny all the time and it still doesn't make any sense. In other words, it's confusing language. So we have to have people understand that it's a vote no so that our community is safe. It's just very counterintuitive. That's why I would suggest that we get something out sooner in the form of a resolution.
And then not worry about putting it on the flyer?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am on it. I think this flyer we keep around all year. So unless there's disagreement about that, I would say it's a separate legislative move on our part.
I'm open to that.
I'm just thinking about timing, since our next meeting would be the end of October. You, I guess the point of a resolution is to indicate our stance or indicate, and I guess as long as that comes out before November 4th, it could have an impact. Just with that timing, it just feels
Tight.
sooner, but our next meeting is, I guess my question is that soon enough?
No, which is why I brought it up 2 months ago.
Yep.
But I don't know what the solution is there. I'm not bitter about that. I'm just saying I don't know how to fix that.
Right.
The more, whatever we can do, right, though, talking about it right now. We're informing anyone who's interested in what the board talks about.
Well, to me, whatever a person's given position would be on the amendment, there needs to be a whole lot of education, because I think a lot of people are in the dark that it's even a thing
Yep.
that people are talking about. And certainly then, if you dig deeper, people don't know what it means. It is very convoluted and complicated. And so, as public educators, I feel it would be important to explain what's going on.
So what other ways do we have to do that historically, if we're worried about the delay in getting a resolution out? Is there anything else we do? It's probably something to ask Kristen Peterson and the superintendent. Is there anything we do that just explains a vote that's coming up that we would put on our website or something? Would it require President Malone and Vice President Williams? Does it require some sort of authorization by the board as to sign off to that kind of messaging? What are you all thinking? I don't expect you to have exactly the answer to this. This is obviously something we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think it's tricky for us when we communicate legislative perspective through our district social media accounts or through our district communications. And so, I think the safer route is if the board communicates something about their legislative interests or their perspective on that, rather than it coming from the school district mechanisms for communication. That becomes a really difficult one for us to navigate with community stakeholders around that. So I think if you guys are communicating your position on that, of course, it can go through our communication channels at that point, but I think doing something out in front of that would create some hardship for us.
Would it make sense for us to do another draft letter to local newspapers? I've done that before. I could send a draft to everyone, and then that can get pushed out through social media, and it can happen, in 2 days.
Could we also maybe put it on the education committee agenda, which meets next Tuesday, since it's an education piece, and then maybe vote on a resolution on Tuesday?
Yeah, we would just add a action section probably to the agenda, right, Kim? We would just, usually it's just a discussion meeting item, for that, but we could just add an action item and have that, and you could do your social media, newspaper, opportunities in between there, and then you would have a chance to do the resolution a week sooner.
I like that.
I think that works.
That was a smart little strategy
good.
there. So do we want to do both? Do you want something, you realize this doesn't have to be a long letter that I could submit on our behalf. Again, just like we did last time, I could have you look at it, tell me if you like anything or don't like anything, but I could get that out to all the usual sources, assuming everyone gets back to me, we could have that out very quickly. So we could do both. All right.
Right. What more, are there specific changes on the legislative priorities we're also thinking? So I'm glad we got that piece out.
Yeah.
So,
I'm wondering if we should change the language of no vouchers, because it's framed as school choice. What we're opposing is not framed as vouchers, it's framed as something else. And so I wonder, if you look and say no vouchers and you aren't up to date, you may think, oh, well, nobody wants vouchers, so this isn't really an issue. And so maybe our language might be a little more responsive to how it's framed in the state.
Public dollars for public schools.
Yes.
That's exactly
Yes,
what
that's
I was
it.
thinking.
But
Yep.
Yeah.
I would also use the language that we are against school choice.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's what's resonating. School choice in a vacuum sounds neat. Okay? But it's definitely not good. So I would like to use that language and what you said, Superintendent Degner. I think we need all the language that's being thrown out at the public. We need to use it here.
Maybe the tag is something like school choice isn't choice, or something like that, and then say we support public dollars for, in the text underneath it. But Kristen is way better at this stuff
Yes.
than we are, so.
Kristen takes our
Good luck,
ideas
Kristen.
and make it into magic. All right. Are there any other discussion pieces related to that?
How about sorry,
No,
I was going to ask more of a question about
Yeah.
number for SSA, or do you want to communicate an actual figure? I mean, I think when the School Board Association did do that in the past, that created some hardship for them or some problems. So, and you don't even have to have that necessarily determined today, but some kind of a number would probably be helpful there if it's different than the one there.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. Yeah, I like the number, and even more than the number, I really like the reasoning, so that we can let people know that this is it. This is why. I mean, and we could have a much longer list, right, of the whys. But the fact is, they are there, and we have math to show that. Like, we have inflationary costs. We have all these very real things that just necessitate a number. And so I like the number, and I like the specificity we include with that.
So is there something, the number that's currently there, are people thinking a different number? And different reasons? I mean, funding should be set predictably, timely, sustainably, equitably, or are you thinking more specifics? Are we thinking that?
I mean, I guess I don't have a big problem with that specific number. If we're being truthfully honest, that number's higher this year than it was last year, just because of inflation. But being my, so I guess I don't have a strong opinion about that, because the chances of us getting this number, right? And if we add another 0.25%, I don't think it changes the conversation at all.
The other thing we could wait on, depending on how soon you want to have this formalized, October 28th, we'll meet as a UEN legislative group, and I'm sure they will talk about a number. The school, there may be other associations that come forward with a number, so we can keep it also in somewhat draft form until we get some of that too, and we can keep putting it on an agenda to talk about, so.
Yeah. I like hearing what other UEN organizations will be discussing.
I do wonder if we can take out some of the language that's a little more puffy, like funding should be set predictably, timely, sustainably, equitably, and instead say, last year in Iowa, inflation was X percent. A 5% SSA is a step towards combating the inflation costs that our district and district sees, just to make it more, to me, concrete and tangible about what is going on in the state and why this is not a realistic number to ask for.
I agree. I would like each point to be structured that way, so that they're action items. So if you look at mental health services, it's a narrative. It's not really an action item until maybe you get down to, well, it doesn't read like an action item, and I think I think we probably could weed through some of it. Again, if we're thinking about what we want the impact of this to be, I think we want it to be more, what are the words I'm looking for?
Digestible for
Thank you.
people to understand.
Yeah, because like mental health services, I tell you, I think about it every day, the language about what's missing and what we need, and it's so important. This language is all accurate. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I think if we stripped it down and made it about what we really need and what we don't have, similar to the funding portion Director Williams is talking about.
That's what I'm hearing you guys say, so more kind of clearly state kind of desperation around the problem and then what the proposed solution is, right?
Yes. And benefits. Like I could see for the preschool one, putting in a statistic that's
Yes.
like, students that have access to 4-year-old preschool achieve at X% higher rates. Something that, so that people can say, okay, you want 4-year-old preschool, why? Oh, they achieve higher.
Great, and restoration of chapter 20, people don't know what that means unless we say, this is what we don't have, this is why we need it, because we want positively impact recruitment and retention of educators. So it goes from what we are lacking, what we deserve, and what we need to get in clear language.
And for the mental health services, I don't know if anybody else saw it, but the Register has a very tragic story about a young man who committed suicide in the paper today. And it laid out a whole bunch of information about gaps in mental health services for children. And I would think that we could probably pull some good statistics or information easily from that. Because Kristen, I don't want you to have to be spending, 25 hours at the library doing research projects for us. But that seemed to be a very nice summary of the deficiencies in mental health services for kids in Iowa.
Yeah, that was.
I also think this is a big lift. These are this is board legislative action items, so it's a lot to put on Kristen to do that, especially since you're looking at a bunch of people that had to get elected by doing a lot of this, using a lot of this language and doing a lot of political strategizing. So if you want to bounce any of this stuff off any of us, this is pretty big stuff. I mean, we are, to use Superintendent Degner's word, there's some desperation involved, but we also have to be careful about how desperate we sound in something like this. So there's a lot of strategy involved in this kind of document. It's not easy.
And another question maybe as a wrap-up point, teacher shortage was one you talked about last time, and just as we talk about that chapter 20 item, I don't necessarily want to, I know people don't understand chapter 20, the further we get away from it, the less they understand it, but at the same time, I wonder what your thought would be about coupling something like that with the shortage issue, right? Because that's one of the
I think that helps
cases that
drive-
have led us to a shortage, right? One of the symptoms of it, so would be okay if you
Yep.
kind of work on some language around that as well.
And I mean, and drawing attention to that, highlighting the teacher shortage piece, and that chapter 20 is a way to help with the problem. Because I think everybody understand, more and more people understand teacher shortage. And to get into
Because we could tell a pretty good story about why there's a teacher shortage. I mean, we
Yeah,
could
if
go
you get
through
it-
the list of things that have happened, right? And chapter 20 would be a big one of those.
Well, you can get into the weeds on that and lose people pretty quick on how important that was. But it also signals to the people who do know that that's where we're at, which is significant as a school board, right? That you would assume that school boards appreciate the relaxation of those rules because it makes their job easier when they go to negotiate with their employees. And we're saying, actually, what we're saying is this helps us because it helps us recruit and retain teachers without getting too weedy on the fine details.
Great. That was a lot of great suggestions and discussion. So we will move on to the next discussion item, which is fundraising student activities fund. Superintendent Degner.
Sure, so Les is probably going to be pulling up a presentation while Kristen talks a little bit here. Kristen's going to start with our fundraising process and how that process works for us. We had a little bit of this conversation in P&G prior to the meeting because of some sample policy we were looking at there. And then Les is going to talk to you about the student activities fund and just kind of the ins and outs of how that works. So with that, I'll let Kristen kick us off.
Good evening, everybody. So our district has a fundraising approval committee. I'm sure you discussed this a little bit in P&G as well. It's been around for quite some time. I joined or became part of it in 2017, but it predates me. But anytime an individual or a group, so whether it be student, staff, or any kind of affiliated group, a PTO, PTA, is looking to or requesting financial assistance or in-kind assistance from our community, from our parents, our stakeholders, or whatever it may be, it is required that they complete a fundraising request form. Once that form's completed, and it asks for a great deal of information if you've ever taken a look at it, but it will first go to the principal in that building. The principal reviews it, makes sure that they support it as well, and then they go through their approval process. If the amount of the fundraiser is to exceed $5,000 at this point, that's the threshold, it would automatically also go to our foundation, and Susan Brennan would review that request and become aware of it and make sure that they're supportive of that as well. So it would go through that approval process as well. Once both of those boxes are checked, so principal approval and then if needed foundation approval, that request then comes to the fundraising approval committee. And that committee consists of district administrators, it consists of elementary principals, secondary principals, folks from our tech group, folks from teaching and learning, folks from ops, so some pretty good representation in that group. And that team then has 48 hours to review the request, ask any questions that they may have. We can go back and forth with the requester if needed, if there's clarification points or anything like that. And then if the request is approved, then that approval goes back to the requester. So that's the overall process. And then I'll turn it over to Les for the student activity piece of it.
So fundraising does play a little bit into student activities, and you'll see that in just a minute. But just want to give you an overview here about what the Student Activity Fund is and how it's used in the schools. The first and probably most important thing is that a Student Activity Fund is a required fund of the school district because you're required to have athletic programs, and so that by definition necessitates a student activity fund, and then that gets further spread out across all of your other activities that you might have at a school. So at the elementary level, it's generally pretty limited. You might have a start of a student senate group in your 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. You might have, a chess club or something that might start for some kids. Some of those type of things, but those are relatively introductory at that level, and so it's relatively minimal. But then it really starts to ramp up when you get into your secondary buildings, and so that's when you see all of your clubs and the music groups and all of those type of things all fall into that. So this is just a reminder where this falls as a public fund in Iowa code, which then makes them our student activities subject to the public purpose, right? And so we've all had that drilled upon us. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but it's just a friendly reminder that that they are still public purpose and that we are still stewards of those funds for the school district. These are just some of the revenues that will come into a student activity fund. As you can see, fundraising events is one of those. These are in no particular order. But just to give you a flavor of what you see in those type of revenues. And then you have the expenditures for those activities. Obviously, athletics is the big one, but you know what those activities are, uniforms, travel to the events, officials, those type of things. But then you have, your music activities, you have travel for some of those events, you have fees to participate in contests and that type of thing. A math club, for example, may travel to another school for competition. They may travel to Des Moines or the regional competition in Lawrence, Kansas that I'm aware of. And so there's some things there for some of those other activities. There's some of these student activities that never leave the building. The kids just meet as somewhat as a social opportunity for those kids to gather in small groups because they don't have an interest in music, they don't have an interest in sports, but it's a way for them to gather and be part of a group. One of the important things to remember is that if you ever disband a group or like the senior class leaves school, those funds for that senior class remain the school district's and are redistributed to other student activities. They cannot be distributed to any, paid out to $5 per student. That's pretty minimal, but it can't be held back to use for a class reunion in 5 years. It has to be used for students in the district. It goes back to that public purpose statement. So Just kind of a reminder there of how that works when some of those things go away. All of the salaries and benefits for our student activities are paid out of our general fund, and you as the board approve those. They're on Appendix C of the negotiated agreement. So if you remember that document, there's X percentage of the base salary is used, for each one of the coaching positions. Each one of the club sponsors have a percentage associated with those. And we all like those to be more because we know that our coaches and our club sponsors put a lot of time in with these kids, and so this is the way those are compensated. Any fundraising activity that are done by these groups have to support the whole group. They don't go to an individual. So if Susie's out there selling fruit, and because Susie's the high seller and sells $5,000 worth of fruit, doesn't mean that Susie gets more for her trip to wherever they're going that they're raising funds for. It goes back to support the whole club or group that's going for that travel. Activity funds cannot be used to donate to external organizations, with the caveat that if you promote it and all of the proceeds go back to that organization. So the biggest one you'll see in Iowa City is obviously Dance Marathon, and I listed that here. A lot of even our elementaries hold mini marathons. Our high schools hold pretty significant events, and all of those funds get donated to UI Dance Marathon. And there's other groups, but that's the one that's most prominent and that we see is just an example. So if you see those activities where a student senator or is doing one of those events, they should have at the bottom, all proceeds or all things raised from this will go back to support this organization. And there's a lot of good reason for these kids to participate in this, right? To become community citizens and learn some of those types of things. And so there's a reason why that's allowed in that way. The student activities can't form separate organizations to act as an operating or as a fundraising group. Now, you're going to say, well, don't we have music auxiliary? Don't we have the booster clubs? Yes, but those are district-wide events. They're not a soccer mom club raising funds for the soccer team or something like that. You can't have that. And the other thing to remember is Title IX and equity is always a consideration for these activities. And I think, this district has just brought on girls wrestling this year, a perfect example of looking at the opportunities that we have in offering that sport. And the high school athletic associations have done a lot to help promote that and help schools go through that. And, I think our athletic directors have done a great job of working for and trying to make those activities meet those areas as well.
Thank you, Les, for the presentation, and Kristen for the opening. Are there any questions, discussions from board members? All right, I think.
Yeah. So I guess that part about the fundraising going into the pool, less for instance, for the music trips, where they have the fruit sales. So the money that each individual generates as a part of their fruit sales, they don't necessarily keep what they generate. That goes into a pool and it's spread across the whole. Okay, that part I did not understand. So thank you for explaining it to me. Did the rest of you understand that either? Okay, all right.
It was some pieces on there that I did not know. The part where when we disband an activity and the district sort of absorb it and it gets dispersed to other activities or other needs throughout the district.
Generally, probably the building administrative team would look at it, maybe work with their student senator or some of their staff within the building and figure out if there's another club or another activity. Maybe it would be seed money to start a new group that has been kind of some students have expressed an interest of, might be an example, but it could go back to other building student activities as well, or support for groups.
So it could stay within that building?
It most likely will, yeah. It's not
Okay.
going to come back to
Great.
the district, so, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, because we ended up here because Director Finch had some questions about the music trip as an example, and I'm still kind of working through it. So if a person, you know, a kid who, let's say, has 0 funds and needs to raise a bunch of money doing the fruit sales, and they're still going to be limited by how much the whole group raises because it's only as good as the group. So I think that's sort of the extra challenge that I hadn't quite understood either. I'm not against this. I'm trying to work it through because that kid who has 0 lacks the control to fund his or herself if it's limited by the group, the group's efforts. Is that
Right,
kind of?
because you have to supplement the rest.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
So that's hard. And I'm just wondering if now that I understand that better, and if people in the district understand that limitation better, we can be more creative about finding alternative ways. And I don't know what those would be, for scholarships or something, so that kids that are in that situation can take those life-changing trips.
Well, a student, in your example, a student could receive funds to support the expenses of the trip from other sources too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the way the equity shakes out on it is our students that don't have access to self-fund their trip, our lower income students, don't also have access to a group of people that are able to buy things as a part of a fundraiser, right? They don't have a lot of people in their lives who can spend $50 on a can of popcorn. And so maybe, I mean, I think we can have equity concerns from all of the different angles, right? And so I can see the student who works really hard to self-fund her trip, no one else does, and then everybody gets $5. But also, maybe a lot of students work hard to fund the trip, and they help the student that doesn't have access to fundraising opportunities be able to afford the trip herself. I guess that's a poor way of articulating, but I think you understand what
I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it was a poor way of articulating it. I still think it just stinks.
It-
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if they didn't have to fundraise and we could just pay for them to go on
Or
this
if you
trip?
could be, you know, in control of your own fundraising, and it wouldn't depend on the fact that it might be harder for you to find people to buy the popcorn.
Yeah, I mean, one way it's more equitable this way because, as Director Williams pointed out, the people who have the means also have the network to do the fundraising. But in another way, it's not equitable because the people who have the means may not have the incentive to fundraise because they don't need to. And so, yeah, the question is how do we help these students who would like to go on these trips and don't have the means? And so one of my questions at the last meeting was, is there an option for scholarships? Maybe are there a handful of students who've really worked hard in their music department for years and would really like to go on this trip, and I don't know what that number would be. Director Abraham, you might have a better idea what that number might be.
It'd be worth asking, I think, and we're primarily talking about music, vocal and band and orchestra who do these kind of trips. I think it'd be worth asking those directors, you know, what are the numbers of kids? My impression, and you can't always tell, but is that it's not very many kids who want to go but aren't able. That there, you know, there's ways to help them get funded, but I think it'd be worth asking.
Yeah.
And just to see, is it a big number or not?
Yeah, and if it is a small number, is there some creative solution that we can find to help those students?
Right, to fund that.
Yeah, how would we organize that kind of an inquiry? Is the board directed, or would we ask the superintendent to give us a report on it?
So it's going to be unpopular, what I'm going to say. But I think you have to ask yourself, is it your responsibility to find a solution for this problem? This goes beyond what our core mission is and what we provide. These are an extra, right? And so, because my fear would be what you're going to ask us to do is to take a district resource and provide it for the kids to go potentially overseas. Now, we do have other fundraising mechanisms. Les mentioned Music Auxiliary, some of those outside partners that would potentially do that. I think it's just a fine line we need to be careful to walk there, because music is one example we're talking about, and is probably the most predominant because of the probably very public nature of the overseas trip. But there could be, I think, some probably other smaller, lower level examples about some mission creep, right? Be going beyond our mission a little bit. So I know that's not an easy thing or a fun thing to say, and of course we want to be equitable in everything we do. I think Director Finch's comment was great, that it's more equitable than it could be. I know the way I did fruit sales for band in high school was you kept what you sold, right? And somebody else didn't have that opportunity, they couldn't do that. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but with these things for these extra trips that are beyond probably the core mission of what we're here to provide, I just think it's a careful one we have to evaluate before we provide solutions.
I guess I wasn't thinking even so much of the overseas as the music trip to Florida and the BPA going to the national conference and some of those things. It seems like all the kids that want to go, there's a way to find funding to do that, but I wasn't thinking about the overseas. But I would agree with you that I don't know that that's something we want to get into providing for everyone, making it an option, because that's above and beyond what we as a school district need to provide, so.
No, I don't think, I want to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that either. I just think it's good for us to kind of talk it out and think about what is available, and how certain students might not to get certain things. Now I have a very good understanding of how the activities fund works. That's all just helpful. And it just gets us thinking, right, about what kids are and aren't able to do. We can't guarantee everybody gets to go to Spain in Spanish 3 and
Right.
Spanish 5.
Yeah.
I mean, mission creep. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I'd probably join French and Spanish then if I could go to maybe France and Spain. You know what I mean? But it isn't something we can be responsible for. It's just a good thought process.
It is, and it's a good process to allow us to have that conversation, to bring it forward for those in the community that do watch these meetings later, because it could be a conversation that maybe they didn't understand how our student activity funds and fees worked, and now that's out there in front, and perhaps it spurs action from other groups that can take that up.
Right, exactly, yeah. I'm reassured to learn that the fundraising is spread out over the entire group that I was not aware of, so.
Yeah, so, thank you for that.
And reminded that our job is just to make sure more of these kids can participate in those activities by what they get exposed to at a very young age, right?
Okay, with that, next on the agenda is our action items. First up is the 100 series that we went over again. Director Finch shared that information. I don't know if there's additional discussion or questions before I open it up for a motion. Seeing none, I will open it up for a motion.
I move that we pass the 100 series as presented.
Second.
Kim, we have a motion and a second.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Next is policy primers. Similarly, we discussed it earlier. Is there any further discussion? If not, I would open it up for a motion.
I move we pass the policy primers.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kim, we have a motion and a second.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Next up on the agenda is Director Liaison Report. I don't know if any directors would like to highlight any of the activities they took part in over the last month.
Thank you, President Malone. I would like to highlight that I represented the board at the Houses into Homes Comfort Food Cook-Off on September 25th and came in a close second with my appetizer.
Good job, Jane. When are you going to make it for us, though?
I sure can. My husband will make it for you.
Okay.
All right.
Well, congratulations.
I would just mention that there was another Latinos para la Educación meeting last night, and the principal from Hills shows up voluntarily. She's on this is just helpful for everyone that has some ELL people participating. We use WhatsApp, and it's great because WhatsApp is what you say. I know, but in Spanish it's WhatsApp. But I know, that's why I corrected myself. I'm gonna start again. So anyway, the great thing about it is, like, we have people that don't speak Spanish on it, but it translates for them. So everybody gets to communicate so easily, and it's just been great. So the Hills principal's on WhatsApp with us, and she shows up when she can, and that interaction between the principal and the parents, and they bring their kids sometimes, it's just been wonderful, so.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Any other directors? Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda setting. Looks like there is an education committee meeting on the 18th. Since it's about that time of year, we'll move with electing a chair. I don't know if JP's gonna throw his name out there again, but it looks like our presentation will be grow our own program, but we also discussed adding an action item to that agenda. So that's not on here tonight, but for the 18th, it should be there.
Yeah, Liberty High Library is where I believe will be, and Brady kind of referenced the topic in his opening remarks about the educators rising, so.
Great. Then there's an operations committee meeting. Also, we'll be electing a chair, and it looks like the discussion item on that will be attendance support busing.
Yep.
And our regular board meeting agenda is listed. We will have another education showcase, as well as, I believe, for presentations, Matt, shouldn't we?
For the 25th, which presentation do you think you're missing?
No, I'm sorry, that's in November, the annual report.
Yeah, we'll have
so-
the annual teach and learning reports in November. We'll also have the middle school, based on when we're going to be able to get feedback from the last group before you guys. We would like to do that the first meeting in November as well. So I did not have a standard presentation there on the 25th.
Thank you. And what's not on here, it just dawned on me, is we will we will have to select topics for our board retreat. It's a limited amount of time, so we'll probably have to do a poll ranking type of thing, because there's a lot of things people have raised that we would like to discuss. There's some housekeeping things that we need to do. So I will follow up with that just to get that in front of board members and get you to think about that, because that's on Saturday, the 22nd?
Yep.
From
Got it.
9 to noon, and it's typically in the back of the boardroom. With that,
An excellent opportunity to bring second place appetizers.
no pressure.
There.
There, any other items? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before I officially adjourn, thank you, administrative team, for joining us again tonight. Have a great night. Meeting is adjourned.